All right, all right, all right.
Get down to business.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alex,
And I'm Ryan.
and this is Between Shelf and Screen.
Can you demonstrate what a shelf is?
Nope. Well, that's it, yeah.
Can you demonstrate what a screen is?
You're looking at it, bucko.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's really intuitive.
Dude, that's what people call me.
And did we say that this is between shelf and screen?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that's how we got on this.
That was 5 seconds ago.
You're right. I got distracted describing what a shelf and a screen is.
Yeah, no, you got
Then
distracted.
I forgot that was our name.
You got distracted with half your day reading Emma.
No need to call me out on it.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll get into why that's okay.
It's finished, so...
Yeah.
That's also what we're going over today, by the way, in case you guys didn't know.
Emma by Jane Austen.
We've only mentioned it like the last 3 episodes about...
It's right up there. It's a cool copy. But mine's cooler.
It's literally the most common one.
Yeah, says you.
Says, I think, commality.
One more time.
I don't know, I just made that word up. Moving on. I feel like
Commonality?
no, I meant what I said.
Okay.
Commality.
Alright.
I get
totally
straight to the
believe you.
point. So I feel like that would have been a word in Emma. And did I mention that?
Ugh.
I don't understand. Like, okay, I liked Pride and Prejudice, but this book just wasn't clicking.
Oh, I am not going to pull any punches. This is what The Road was for you is what Emma was for me. This was awful. I had a
to do it to
terrible,
you.
terrible time reading this.
I had to do it to you.
I had a terrible time reading this. It was a combination of things. It's a combination of her writing style, which it's flowery, it's pretty, but it's very long run-on sentences. And then the dialogue, which is the same as her writing, and then just the
And
language.
pointless.
Yeah, the language used, just like the old-timey language.
Yeah.
There's that factor, which just made me like feel this like if I was this far
So
away at the
far
beginning,
removed.
it was I was this far by that point. And
Yeah.
like the first 60 pages is when it peaked, and then there's 400. How many? Like
My
400.
copy had exactly like 400.
Mine had like
Yours had-
450.
Yeah, 480, I think you said.
Oh my, yeah, no, it was a tough read. Like I really like at a certain point, like I would sit there and read it, and I read a good bit of it just like sitting there. But then, like, I had to just put it on while I was driving, like, and get the audiobook from YouTube and just plow through it and just power
Yeah.
through it. Like, it really was not a fun experience.
Yeah, I broke it up between reading and listening, and I will say that I enjoyed it more physically reading it, and I do like I'll get into my praises kind of when we get more into the actual plot. These are just our overall views.
Yeah, I really gotta
But-
think. I gotta think about my praises.
It just fell off. It was too long. That's my main criticism. Pointless characters, too long. I didn't care about any of the characters.
Yeah, they're all unlikable.
They're there for one purpose, and she could have condensed it. Like, she would create one plot point and then have to introduce a new character to then carry that out. It's like, why can't it all just be happening to the same group? Like, I don't want more and more
Yeah.
characters.
Like, Sally Rooney, like we were talking about this, definitely took
Inspiration.
a lot of inspiration from Jane Austen. But she did it in a way that, like, we could like. There's a actual plot going on there. And there is the modernity of it, which, like, helped us relate.
Yeah.
But like with Jane Austen, there just wasn't that in this book, and like it felt like each chapter was a short story that just ended. There was no end; it just stopped.
Yeah.
And then it like pointless conversations just about who has more money, who has the better etiquette, why Emma hates this person, and then they would just be petty. The monologues are petty, just they go on and on. And oh man, it was just it was it was bad. I remember Jane Austen, like, she said something. I think she quoted this book saying, "Oh, I wrote this book thinking only I would be enjoying." Or I wrote this book. Oh my god, I'm butchering this. She goes, "I only thought I would be interested in this sort of thing." Like she didn't. She didn't write it for a large audience. She's just like, I just wrote it because it interested me, which I can respect. But
Yeah.
God,
I think the plot was amazing, and she has really good character. She can create a really good character, but she just introduces
Yeah.
way too many that it's overwhelming for any author.
Yeah.
And that's just like, it was too much that she tried to include in this book. And then she'd also like repeat kind of situations to really hone it in, and it was just constant. Like, it's like they weren't learning from their mistakes.
Yeah,
And
no, there's no character development.
And I could understand if it was one problem that she chose where they, like, Emma kept just, like, missing the point, but it was so many things that it just didn't feel like she knew exactly what she wanted Emma or Harriet or anyone to be.
Yeah, I don't think I've read anything. Well, I don't think I've read fully through anything as tedious as this, because I was hurting. And it's supposed to be like, I know it's supposed to be like satirical, making like fun of like rich people and like the way they view things in England, you know, but I don't know.
In England,
Well,
I
yeah,
don't know,
rich
actually.
people in England in like this time period. This was like a commentary on them being like pompous and
Right.
whatnot. It's supposed to be, or at least that's what some people said it was.
No, I definitely see that from Jane Austen, and I think Pride and Prejudice has those tones. It's just from the other side. It's not from the pompous. Like, it's someone
Yeah.
else calling out the pompous rich people. And I appreciated that more. And, like, I liked it in the beginning because Emma needed to learn. Like, Emma's not supposed to be likable, and she does have a little bit of development, but it just,
Yeah.
for how long it took, it doesn't feel like it's satisfying.
Yeah, and then there at the very end, I'm not giving away anything, but at the very end, there's a very out of place romance that just pops up,
Yeah.
and out like in the middle of it, in the middle of the dialogue, when that romance popped up, I'm like, oh, like the only reason I knew it was happening is because the characters said like, "You're the one I'm supposed to love," and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
No chemistry.
It was disappointing because Jane Austen has been really good about that, but I didn't get it from this book because there was so much going on
Right.
that
Yeah.
and it felt rushed, and it's like you had 400 pages and then you rushed like the thing that I came here for, which I also came here for Emma's growth, but again, stretched on and didn't progress.
And I feel like she barely grew.
Right, like not 400 pages worth.
Yeah.
If this was like I could see this being 200 pages.
Easily. Maybe 100.
No, I could
hope
see her
to God.
writing this sub 200 pages.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just
No, I was the whole time I was reading this, I was like multiple times I asked Brian, I'm like, am I stupid? Am I missing something? Like, what is this good? Is this actually good, or am I just dumb?
no, I felt the same.
Yeah.
And I was pretty confident about the beginning part, and it just dropped off.
It did.
And I didn't think that I would say this, but like I did
Right.
not enjoy reading this. I don't know how. Like,
Yeah.
if it was in sections, if it was just short stories,
Yeah.
and it wasn't expected to know what was going on previously, it could have been good. But,
Right. It felt like that, but it just, ugh.
yeah. So next week, Pride and Prejudice. It actually is
I'm not-
better.
Like, I know. I'm just not very sold on the prospect
No.
of Jane Austen so early.
I don't think we should. I'm burnt out with that.
Yeah.
But
That's the problem. I feel like I kind of want to rant about like just like classic literature for a second, because I feel like there's
you're gonna be pompous.
I'm gonna be pompous right now, but there's like not every bit of classic literature is going to be a classic for everyone. That's why I kind of
Right.
have beef with this sort of genre.
That just declares that this
Like,
is
this is a classic and you should love it.
yeah.
But like I wish in schools, because I know, like, I remember I talked to a couple people about this. Apparently, like, they had to read it in school. And
That's right.
if I would have had to read this in school, I hated my life. But the point I was, like, getting at, or
They didn't
that
even
I'm
have
getting
the
at.
movie then. The movie just came out like
Right, yeah.
a year ago or 2 years.
Right. But the point I was getting at is, like, there's so much literature out there that I love, like classic literature. And I wish in schools, because, like, if this was my first introduction to literature, I'd have been scared off from reading. Like, I would have been like, no, thanks, not for me.
That. This is harder than Shakespeare, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because at least...
It's a tough read.
Yeah, it was a lot harder. The beginning also doesn't prepare you for that. Like, it just felt like it was
like
going
a different book.
Yeah, a completely different path. And it literally peaked at the first argument between...
Mr. Knightley and Emma.
Yeah, that's all I'll say for now. Because it's
Yeah.
still like 100 pages in.
No, but yeah, like, there's so many good pieces of literature out there that I've read this year even.
Yeah.
That, like, man, like, I just wish in schools that they didn't insist on these certain books that you have to make students read. I wish they would give you variety, because, like, again, like, if I could so easily see somebody who, like, could be, like, really interested in reading, getting handed this book and being put off from it completely, and then coming back to it way later in life. Yeah, because I had that with, like, A Tale of Two Cities. I did not like that book. Maybe
Never read that. Never had to.
It's Charles Dickens. It's
Oh god, that's all I hear about Charles Dickens. So.
Just
Besides Great Expectation, that's the only one I've heard actual good things about. Everything else he makes is. Ugh.
Yeah, no, like, it should have been, like, something I was interested in, because it's about the French Revolution, but, like,
he also, like, was he involved in the French Revolution?
I don't know.
And, like,
I forgot everything
like,
I was taught about that. I brain dumped.
They didn't have, like, Google back then. I may be wrong. Like, someone tell me when Google was founded, but, like, maybe Mance didn't know what he's talking about and just was, like, BSing his way through it. Just kidding. I know they could talk, like, write a story about it, but, like...
No, yeah. I remember, we would go over chapters and we get quizzes in that class for that book specifically. And I'm talking about this a lot because it does relate to... Because this is the exact same experience I could see myself having with Emma.
Yeah. Thank God.
If, like, we had to read a couple chapters, then we were quizzed over, like, what happened. Mm-hmm. And, like, I would sit there with the book copy and I'd listen to the audiobook and I'd follow along. And you'd think, like, oh, like, there's no way you couldn't retain it. Mm-hmm. But, like, I was so bored throughout that whole book, and the language just put me off so bad that I hated it. Didn't retain anything. Made terrible grades in the quiz. And it's weird because I love reading now.
Right. I feel like that happens to a lot of people. And it's now that it's kind of become a trend, it's gotten better. Like, people are picking up more books outside of just school, but, like, it really does ruin school. Really does find a way to ruin all of it
for real.
And there's some good ones, but you can't appease all students.
Exactly.
Like, there were some books I read that I loved, and then other people would hate them.
Yeah, I got to read The Book Thief, which is, like, the peak.
Same, yeah.
The peak of reading in school, really.
That was good.
And the things they carried. We're gonna have to get to that one eventually.
Right.
It's so
that's
good.
so. I feel like that's weird that you. What class was that in? History?
It was like my lit. It was lit class.
So
and we read a bunch of George Orwell too.
Well, yeah, of course.
And then George Orwell, and
I'm disappointed they didn't make us.
Yeah, because he's good. He's so accessible. Like,
that's one where it's like, I feel like it does appeal. That's one that can appeal, except when you give it Animal Farm to 6th graders. I think it's about actual animals.
Right.
That was dumb. I don't know why my school did that.
I just read that. We both read that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that one
That's
eventually.
a good one. But, yeah, in high school, I feel like that's overall just good. Because people are also, like, kind of forming their own beliefs. And so it just is an insight into...
Exactly. Well, it's like, okay, here's my idea for literature classes in high school. Hear me out. So you know how they're like, okay, we got to teach American Lit. Mm-hmm. And, like, you have a specific class for that. And I think that's all you really get in high school.
Yeah.
So instead of just being like, here's American Lit through this time period, this is all you can pick from, I think they should be like, okay, here's our literature class, and you have a couple different teachers assigned, and they give you a wide variety of a bunch of books from any sort of country that's like classical literature, and you get to pick from those and do like projects on them. Like, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, it was nice when they like allowed us to actually choose, so we felt like we had some control over it. No, like I feel like that would definitely benefit the system in
Yeah,
place
it would
because
give like people that, like I said, who want to do or who do like reading but just don't know it yet really. And they
right, it feels more opening to like, okay, well I chose this, so it's my fault that
yeah,
it sucks. Like when we did get an option, it was like, you know, I felt better about it. It didn't feel like, okay, well I just have to get through with this. It's like, oh no, like I wanted to. There was something I found interesting about it, so like at least there's that. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm glad that we didn't have to read this in school because I
yeah.
also feel like
Jeez.
this. I'm glad I read Pride and Prejudice before, even though that's still a tough read. It at least like has a consistent plot and it has build up, and it's just, basically, I'll put it this way: I suggest that over Emma, and that'll reflect in my review of Emma.
Yeah, and
So
since
that's
this is my first introduction to Jane Austen, I'm not sold.
yeah.
So it's gonna be it's gonna be a while before I wanna get to another one. But I'm still open to it. But like if
She
this
has
is
really good prose, and it's
yes.
just there's so much in the middle.
Yeah, it's just I don't know, it's a style that I'm not used to. It's a
Yeah.
run-on sentence sort of style where like she describes everything so specifically, which is like good. I usually really like that, but it's a run-on sentence and just goes on and on and on about descriptions, and then by the end of the sentence you're like, I didn't care about any of that.
Yeah. And like certain characters, the second they open their mouth, you're just like,
I like time to tune out.
right, okay, I know exactly what they're gonna say, how they're gonna say it,
Yeah.
because they're the same exact person every scene.
Right.
That's what I felt with a lot of like the older like adults in this book, older than Emma.
Yes.
Yeah, it was disappointing nonetheless.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll jump into spoilers now.
Yeah. Alright.
So, getting into spoilers. You want to do that? Do you want to do
Sure.
that, or do you want to cut it here?
Yeah, we're done.
Not even. What are we gonna spoil?
Yeah.
We didn't read the book.
Spoiler. I'm trying to think of a specific instance where I was like had a critique on.
I think overall the environment was just lackluster.
Oh yeah.
Like most of the book. This isn't even a spoiler, but
Yeah.
we've already moved past that. Most of the book is just set indoors, and like
Yeah.
they don't even like really experience a lot of things. Like it's just at someone's house and they have dinner. Like it's not like, again, Pride and Prejudice had like balls and interactions that way, which was a nicer way to introduce so many characters, knowing like without actually having to remember them.
Yeah.
While like these would introduce a bunch at different parties, but then they'd come back and you're like, how is this person related?
And okay, I'll put it this way: a chapter starts, people talk, nonsense. It ends.
Yeah, no actual setting. I think they were in the void half the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the scene where they described like the drawing and Emma.
Oh
That's
yeah.
where you also got to see a little bit of this conceited, or not a little bit, a lot of conceitedness from Emma, and her like pushing this romance on Harriet because she's a matchmaker.
And then Harriet just getting screwed over repeatedly, and then Harriet just worshiping Emma. See
which
that
Emma's such like, in their dynamic is such a good like
one to
story
explore.
plot.
Yeah.
And the first 100 or so pages was so good at doing that, and then it just repeated the same things and added
Yeah.
more characters.
And then like Harriet just doesn't like throughout the whole thing. Spoiler alert.
We're in spoilers.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying this for emphasis. She doesn't change. No character changes.
There's
Emma
not.
does a tiny bit, but it's like, wow, I still don't like you.
It's just a disappointing amount for how long it's been.
Yeah.
That's really it. It's
At
not
the end,
like
sorry.
No, you're good.
At the end, Emma basically just admits that she was doing all this for her.
Right.
And screwing over, and like Harriet's the one getting screwed over, and she's suffering as a result of Emma's actions. And then Emma realizes that, feels bad. That's the development.
Right, and it's like, it would have been fine if you cut out 250 pages, because it was just disappointing.
Yeah.
That's not how you handle that long of a continuous and then end it.
Exactly. And then one of the Emma's things that like she was really staunch on, and that was very interesting, was the fact that she didn't want to get married.
Mm-hmm.
And like, she's just kind of spoiled, and she liked living under her father's like house and wealth.
Right. Which again, like, good setup.
Yeah, good setup, and that's like all she wanted to do. And then at the very end, she realizes
she's also like obsessed with setting other people up with like getting married and romance, and it's just like, okay, good.
Yeah.
Funny, like kind of weird parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's at the very end, she realizes her wrongs that she's done to Harriet. And then Mr. Knightley confesses his love to her, and then she's just like, okay. And she gets married. That's it.
It's so unearned, unlike
like
Pride and Prejudice. Just saying. And I was excited because I liked Knightley too as a character.
Yeah.
I liked the bicker, but then it was only bicker and arguments, and then it was whatever. And they both had their reasons. I think the arguments were reasonable, but that was it. And then I don't know. That's at least all that I picked up on. And it just went on for too long where I was like, I don't care. Everything took way too long to develop that it made you just not even satisfied when anything happened.
The stakes were the stakes were so incredibly low at all points. Mm-hmm. Nothing gets you on the edge of your seat at any time.
And there were so many marriages. And like first starting with Elton, Mr. Elton, him confessing his love to Emma was relatively good. Like, it made me hate him because he was awful.
Yeah.
But good scene, good writing. I would have punched him in the friggin' face, but Emma can do whatever she wants. And then he just gets married, and he's like just the worst at all times. And I'm like, why is he still getting brought up? Like, he
moved too.
Yeah, and he was continuously brought back in the story, and I was like, please, let's end this. And then she would have Harriet with another guy who then would just get married. And maybe it's just because we're not from that time. I don't know. Did that just like happen, and I should be like not even fazed by this? But it was so incredibly annoying because you wouldn't even be invested. Like, Mr. Elton, I was invested in before all that happened with liking Harriet, specifically just the drawing scene. And even like looking back, I think she did good writing because she made it vague enough where it seems like he's talking about Harriet. Yeah. But you can also see that he was just talking about Emma's skill at drawing Harriet and not that Harriet was this beautiful. I was like, okay, that was good. But then, like, the rest of the guys, you just don't even care because it's the same exact thing. And I know most of it was just to build up Harriet, but it ended flatly because...
Ended the same way every time.
Yeah, and then
Harriet just blames herself.
Yeah.
And then Emma's like, we'll find another.
And then, like, at the beginning, the whole marriage letter in the chapter where Emma's basically manipulating Harriet to then turn it down and then be like, I did good. Like, good writing, again, because it was reasonable that Emma is kind of just being immature and manipulative, but can also learn from this, and she does kind of acknowledge that. But then, like, she ends up with Mr. Martin anyways at the very end for, like, no reason.
And, like, it just happens.
Yeah, and you
never get to meet Mr. Martin.
Right, and it's not like we get continuous scenes. That's one of the characters that she should have continued to bring in, so we'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe it's still on the table.
Yeah, he
No.
seemed like he seemed like the only character that was halfway likable because he was never in a scene.
She never had to like talk about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was so frustrating beyond belief.
And the monologues, like I said, just went on and on and on. And I was just so tired of it.
Oh my god, and can we talk about Jane? Her scenes
Tell me.
just took so long.
Yeah.
And it was just so... Jane could have been a good character, too, because I get introducing her for Emma to be kind of, like, selfish and vain. Is that the right word? Vanity? And just, like, be jealous. And then realize, you know, girls, woo, we're all good, or whatever it is. But every scene with Jane was just so frustrating because she felt so bland.
Yeah.
I just... And
maybe
just
it's
made to make Emma realize one issue. Like, none of it felt thought out. It just, you could tell what that character was doing there, and it was for Emma to then develop in this way or acknowledge this, and that's it.
Yeah, and maybe it's a disconnect with the time, the people of the time, and maybe like it's supposed to be humorous in a sort of way,
Right.
a niche way that like it
We're
was
just
back
not
then.
getting.
Yeah, like you know,
Yeah.
and you know, I know old writing like this a lot of times, like misses like sort of like a tactile feeling to writing that we get nowadays. So like you know, like in a scene, it's a lot of writers like to make it like cinematic. So they're like, a piece of dialogue happens. You explain what the character does, how their face moves, how the environment shifts.
Right.
And here you just get monologues and then little pauses in between where she describes how Emma was feeling
Yeah.
and then monologue and then
Right.
chapter end.
Yeah. No, seriously. There's definitely a disconnect with the writing style. And, like, one podcast that I listened to that talked about Pride and Prejudice, it's, like, podcast called Books and Bitches, I think. And it was these three girls that have, like, a book club. And at the very beginning of the episode, one said, "You are lying to yourself if you said you enjoy reading this." And I was like, yeah, I feel like it just, Jane Austen doesn't click the same way. She does have amazing prose, and you can still enjoy a story. And maybe the story just didn't click because that's not what we needed to hear. But I can understand how it can help some people or introduce these ideas that people might not have thought of and inspire someone or whatever, because it is a feminist novel of its time, which is impressive in its own.
Yeah,
But-
it's pretty I'll give it that. It's pretty
Yeah.
progressive. Like even for
100%.
today's time, you know.
Right. And so, like, I praise Jane Austen in that way, and I don't think poorly of Jane Austen. Just isn't one of those ones that I can click to. It's just a little too dated for me, I think,
Yeah.
when it comes to enjoyment. But I still like her plots that she chooses, the kind of messages she's sending. It just takes too many words to send these messages, which I think is more popular in that time. Like, classics are so long
Yeah.
for no reason. It must have just been a culture thing of that time.
Yeah.
But I am excited for this movie. I'll say that.
I think this is gonna be more fun to watch.
Yeah, and that's how I
You can
feel
do-
about
yeah.
Pride and Prejudice. Like, I don't know. I'd have to give Pride and Prejudice another read, but it does help. Like, I watched the movie before I read the book, and it does help having that context.
Yes, and also I
So
like.
maybe I'll like Emma after I watch the movie if I read it again. I'm willing to give this book another try in better pieces, not like rush to finish, because I think that doesn't
I'm
help.
not.
either. No, I understand that.
Well, what was I gonna say?
We never rated this book.
Oh, 1.5.
No hesitation.
Yeah.
I would give it a 2.75.
Yeah, I'm sticking to my guns here.
1.1 out of 5.
Yeah. You get a 1.5.
1.5.
That's out of
out
respect.
5.
That's like, this is purely out of respect for the author.
You're like kind of an ally of women.
Yeah, 1.5 stars out of 5. That's how much of an ally I am. I feel like garbage too because I really wanted to.
I really
Enjoy this.
wanted to. I think overhyped. Like I got it overhyped. I had this image in my mind of what it would be. It just didn't end up. I want to see it. Let's rewrite it.
I could. Not very well. Not
Expect
very
that
well.
next episode.
Not very well, but it will be shorter.
There will always be one benefit.
Yeah.
But
I don't make it a page long.
yeah, just like this episode, it's gonna be shorter than all our other ones.
I was gonna say something. Slipped my brain.
God, that's so embarrassing.
I know. I freaking know. But yeah,
Come on, remember.
oh yeah, I mean, oh yeah, I wanted to say, hey, if you were thinking that we had a bias towards the books, think again. Because I'm actually more excited for the show. Or movie.
Movie, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
I
think
feel like it needs to be 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Like a story that would only be 2 hours. Like the audiobook was 16 hours or something, which weren't you going to mention something about the audiobook? About the one that you specifically...
It saved me. It saved me because, I drive a lot and just threw it on. And I'm going to be real with you. It's like, I'm sure many people can relate with this. Like, if there's a book that I really care about, sometimes I'll read a whole page and then my mind will be wandering. And I'm like, oh, gotta go back. Gotta retain. Didn't really bother with this one.
Honestly, I felt that.
Yeah. I just, the important part was I read it and then it was done.
I felt that.
You could read the first 100 pages and the last 100 pages and you're good to go.
True. Honestly. And also skip the last 100 pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just read the first 100 pages.
It's just the big revelation at the end is that Jane had this secret engagement with Mr. Churchill. And everybody's shocked.
I literally didn't care. At that point, I was out of the story. I was like, please get to at least Kingly. And
no,
Knightley, yeah. Kingly. I almost typed that too when I was talking about that earlier. I don't know why that's clicking. It's not even a name. But yeah, I was so looking forward to that because Jane Austen does a good job with that and it just fell flat.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
It's definitely, I think this is one of those books that's written before, obviously, films were a big thing. But I think...
What?
Yeah, right? No,
They didn't film? They didn't film at this time?
I'm going to forget my whole point. You're throwing me off. But I think film has definitely influenced the way we write things. Because, and for the better. Because they'll cut the fat in a lot of ways. And they'll make it more concise. And it makes you picture the scene better.
And I feel like they get it. Well, it helps just having audience reaction, like the actual reviews and hearing back from the audience and knowing oh wow, they don't care about 18-page long monologues.
Because nobody talks like that.
Right.
Unless it's a person giving a speech. Ain't nobody doing that.
Right. Yeah, so I think that's what caused the now push to having shorter books. And it keeps getting shorter. Now the average... I'm pulling this out of my ass. But I feel like books are getting shorter and shorter. Nowadays, the books that are just coming out, for example, Sally Rooney, she stays between 300, around 300 pages.
Yeah. Which is it depends on the story you're telling, but that's all you need for a decent...
I think that's a
book.
good... when you have one specific plot you want to focus on, that is perfect. That's all you need to finish the story. And yeah, there's some books that like are longer that are still amazing. Like I'm not
Yeah,
knocking them,
I'm a
but
Stephen
I
King
feel
fan. Like, you know, like
I
I
cannot
was,
side with that.
yeah, I was talking to you. I'll mention this because it's kind of funny. I was talking to her, and I was just like, I really like books that cut the fat, that don't add any unnecessary things. She's like, and you like Stephen King, and I was like, I have a good reason for this, because it's the writing
This is
style.
so biased.
It's a writing style. If you have a good writing style, I'm able to forgive a lot, and if you can go on tangents, and I will find it endlessly interesting because it's the way you write it.
But like, does Stephen King really do that?
Yes, I think.
He talks
I
about
think.
women. He goes on a tangent about women. That's pointless.
She really doesn't like the mention of boobs in Stephen King books.
I don't like
I
a
love it.
lot
No,
of
I'm
things
joking.
he talks about. He's low key kind of weird.
He's a little bit piggish, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. A wee bit.
So
If you know that one scene in it, you know that he is weird.
it's just not normal. I can't
Yeah,
get
not
there.
epic.
Can't get past that. But God, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Got so distracted by Stephen King.
Yeah,
What a
now I'm
creep.
fired up and I'm upset. No. But I was just gonna mention like there's a huge push for I think saying within the 200 to 300 page range because also our attention spans are getting shorter, which is awesome. But it just
I don't think that's.
what?
I mean, I don't think our attention spans are getting shorter. I think
I think we just have more options, so then we choose to, yeah.
we're nobody wants to read that long of a book unless it's like fantastic.
Well, yeah, and it's already been a thing. Like there, you could see a shift between books written in that era and like early-ish 1900s. They were still like getting a lot shorter already because media was becoming more a thing, like television and news, and just more connection from people, and just like a whole bunch of changes was happening at that point.
Yeah.
And I think people realized, okay, this isn't exactly what my audience wanted, but for Jane Austen, she was writing for herself, I think, for the majority of it. And if that's what she liked, and like plenty of people love it still.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with this story in the sense that it did something
Heinous.
right. It just doesn't work
Yeah.
for everyone, and that's okay.
I'm trying to think of an author that, well, I'm trying to think of classical authors that are in roughly the same time period, and I'm thinking of Jane Austen's probably a little bit later, but Dostoevsky. We got to get into him,
Right.
definitely. I read one of his books for my world literature class, The Underground Man, and
That's right.
his dialogue and I was so surprised. It must be like a translator thing, like because he's a Russian author.
Yeah.
So it must be the way it was translated.
You're not reading the Russian copy?
Nope,
Not yet?
not yet. I'm
Okay.
working on it.
When you do Russian lit?
Yeah, we'll get there. But in Dostoevsky's books, at least the one that I read, it's like he gets you drawn in.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way he talks to you.
Right.
Like this one just felt like, you ever have somebody just ramble on, tell you a story in a corner, and you just like tune out? That's
Yeah.
what this. It doesn't feel like it's talking at you and like trying
That's
to get
true.
you involved.
That's very true. That's a good way to put it. I didn't think about it like that because none of it felt important. None of it felt directed towards
Yeah.
Emma.
It's just like listen to somebody who liked to hear themselves talk.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I guess that's kind of pompous behavior, though.
Got her point across.
Sure. Yeah. I hated all of them. That was her point. Yeah.
I feel like we read another satire, American Psycho,
Mm-hmm.
and even though that wasn't like an enjoyable read, you were drawn in.
Yeah, and that's a good comparison. I mean, is it really a good comparison?
It's a lot more absurd.
Extreme. Yeah.
Absurd and extreme.
And it is a different time period.
Yes.
So, like, way different. But
Like hilarious and
right,
horrifying at points.
you can hate the characters and still love the story.
Yeah.
And I just
honestly,
hated the characters.
I think about that book a lot.
No shame.
And I laugh a lot. Like, it's definitely kind
I
of
laugh
hilarious.
because of the movie.
Yeah, that movie's funny too, yeah.
The movie's good. Yeah. No, I mean, American Psycho was absurd.
Yeah.
It was actually insane.
Yeah.
And I do love this story, but it was traumatizing.
Yeah, yeah, genuinely.
So I can't forget it for many different reasons.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I feel like that's all I have to say about Emma.
Yeah, I'm down to read more satires, though, now that I think about it.
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh, another thing. I realize I have a love-hate relationship with gossip kind of books. Because I love the gossip, but, like, when I care about the gossip...
I feel like conversations with friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Like, that's an enjoyable type. Like, you can...
Of gossip. Yeah. So, this book wasn't the best for me because it's so easy for me to hate a gossip as much as I love some gossip books.
Yeah.
But yeah, satires would be fun. I do love a good like unreliable narrator or just like
it's
gray
it's
character.
I love a good gray character that you're not supposed to like, and it's supposed
when
to be
it's
funny.
the main character.
Yeah.
Like when you're reading from their perspective, it's so fun because I can be like, you suck, but also I want to see you get better.
Yeah, well, like if
and I guess I wasn't really like that for Bateman.
Yeah, I mean, if the book just cut out like the lengthy murder scenes, it probably we probably would have been like, this is so funny, I want more of this, you know?
Right. No, genuinely.
Yeah.
But it is. Well, this isn't the episode, so I don't want to spoil anything. That's a good satire though, because also it still leaves you up to like what even is happening in so many different ways.
We just talk about the kosher.
And I did ask that question a lot in this book. I was like, what is even happening? What's real?
I keep on thinking about the scene where he's trying to get a milkshake.
I know. That's a good one. I wish that was in the movie.
Yeah.
God, we need to stop.
Because that chapter is just so absurd. Like, everything that's happening is just so bizarre and hilarious.
The author had fun.
He did.
Yeah, we need to stop talking about this.
Yeah.
We bring this up every episode. This is our new Walking Dead.
I know.
Oh, I snuck it in for this episode.
Ooh.
Taking a little mention.
Dude.
A little haha.
And then we'll do a Legend of Korra and Avatar review eventually.
God, snuck that one in too.
Yep.
You really got me there.
I'm gonna make you watch it one day.
We need to end this.
We do.
Because I can't have another mention of The Last of Us. Okay, bye guys. Anything left to say?
No, you mentioned it.
Okay. This is the last you'll see of us.
Bye forever.